Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. We will start in 2 minutes. Sorry? Yes. So for colleagues that want to have the French translation, please, you can find your headphone outside if you need the translation. Thank you. If you need the French translation, there are the headphones outside. Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending this session. We are still seeing that people are entering. My name is Patrizia Fracassi. I'm Senior Officer in the Food and Nutrition Division, and I will be moderating this session. For whoever wants to have the French translation, please, you can find the headphone outside. It is my pleasure to welcome you today to the event Harnessing Climate and Biodiversity Investment to realize the right to food for healthy diets and sustainable planet. Before proceeding, I'd like first to run through some practical information to ensure the smooth running of this event. Please be informed that this event will be recorded and is being webcast, apparently. Distinguished speaker and guests, please follow the meeting in mute. And the meeting will be conducted in English and in French. Interpretation is available for those who wish to have it. I'm very pleased to start the event by introducing our first speaker. It is my pleasure to welcome Kaveh Zaidi, Director of the Office of Climate Change, Biodiversity and Environment. Kaveh, thank you for being with us today, and please, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, Excellencies, colleagues, dear friends. It's a pleasure to join you. Lynette and I thought we had a double act, but the other way. But okay, you have to build on mine rather than me building on yours. But I think we've got a message that's very, very simple, and I think we share it in that investing in agri-food systems can help achieve climate and biodiversity ambitions while also delivering on the healthy diets, on the sustainable livelihoods, on a thriving planet. We have to find ways of delivering across multiple agendas with single investments, especially in today's world. And of course, what we've been advocating very strongly, and with many of you in this room, is that investing in agri-food is actually part of that solution, right? Investing in agri-food is important because when it comes to food security and nutrition, in a way, that same investment pays off twice. It pays off, first of all, in terms of course, sustainable agricultural practices that can protect soil health, use diversity of seeds, and enable the current agricultural land and crops to meet both the need for yield and nutrition of a growing population. I mean, that's a story, and Lynette will tell it much better. But at the same time, it delivers again because adopting healthy diets and reducing food loss and waste, just to take an example, can offer powerful opportunities also to cut greenhouse gas emissions. And we're not doing very well on that front, on building resilience, an absolute necessity in a changing climate, and improving human health. And I think that's a story that you're all now familiar with, and probably we're amongst the believers in here. But I think the nice thing is that we've gone from the theory of saying that to showing what it means on the ground. And it's these in-country experiences that really put the sort of the flavor to the story. And if I can just mention a few to you today. On the ground, we've worked, for example, with Senegal, and of course, I acknowledge with pleasure the representation here, with Côte d'Ivoire, with the support of the government of Quebec. We've worked with those two countries and helped women farmers to access credit through community savings groups. And then these funds have enabled them to restore land, and a third of global agricultural land is degraded. So you can imagine the power of restoring a third of global agricultural land. To restore the land, to diversify the crops and grow their organic gardens, leading, of course, to better yields on the one hand, high quality produce, healthier diets for their families and for their communities. It's just a small example that shows you can actually achieve multiple benefits with singular interventions, investments, if they're done correctly. And countries are beginning to, I think, acknowledge this. And many, many more are coming to us as FAO to help them tap into the potential of agri-food systems to deliver across the board for climate, biodiversity, food security, and nutrition. We have 32 of those countries that have come to us to work together under the Food Systems Integrated Program, the integrated program that we run or coordinate jointly with IFAD under the Global Environment Facility, the GEF. 32 countries essentially have said, we want to address our climate and biodiversity challenges through the window of agriculture. This integrated program, it's around the $280 million program across those 32 countries with a global sort of overlay. It's basically, it's helping to strengthen the value chains, it's promoting sustainable practices in different sectors, whichever the country has chosen to prioritize, rice, livestock, aquaculture, cacao, whatever it might be, promote sustainable practices and drive that agri-food system transformation that we've been talking about so much. And scaling up this impact is possible, but it does require more investment, right? And the investment is still small because agri-food systems, especially the investments that reach the farmers, right? And Andrea, I'm sure, will talk about that, and the smallholders in particular, they remain very much at the margins of climate finance. Only about 7% of total climate finance, public and private, I guess, goes to agri-food, and just a fraction of that, of course, reaches then the small holders, and that really is holding us back. That is what is preventing the scaling up of these solutions, and it's limiting countries' abilities, not just on the food and nutrition side, but in terms of the ambition on climate as well, and biodiversity and its sustainable use, and ultimately on the sustainable development goals. And that's why we are working so hard to try to connect these dots, to ensure that agri-food smallholder farmers are actually part of, for example, the climate conversation. And that's why a month ago or so, it feels like longer, so much has happened since then with the World Food Forum, but about a month or so ago, we brought the UNFCCC Standing Committee on Finance Forum here to FAO with a dedicated conversation on exactly this, on how to finance climate action through agriculture and food systems, the kind of interventions that we know bring multiple benefits, of course, also for food security and nutrition. And we're very much trying to put agri-foods at the center of the UNFCCC climate conversation. Similarly, through the FAST partnership that was created in one of these conferences of the parties at COP27, we're bringing together multiple actors, hosted, of course, at FAO, with ICANN being an important, I guess, partner in it. It is really about bringing to the table the climate community, the agriculture community, the finance community, to understand the power of that investment. The singular best investment you can have of climate finance is through agriculture and food systems. If you want returns on emissions, if you want returns in terms of adaptation, if you want returns in terms of nutrition and food security. And I think that's the message that all of our mechanisms, all of our platforms are carrying, including through the FAST partnership. We just can't meet our climate and biodiversity goals without transforming how we produce, trade, and consume food. And I think the nutrition piece is not the strongest piece there. I don't think we have yet found the convincing narrative of why that investment that includes nutrition brings so much more benefit from a climate perspective as well, from a biodiversity perspective as well, and not just from a nutrition perspective. And that's something that we look forward to working much more with all of you on in the weeks and months ahead. So anyway, we really hope that this conversation continues that momentum that we've built around agriculture and food systems being really a worthwhile climate and biodiversity investment, bringing really good returns in terms of climate and biodiversity, but of course much more broadly in terms of food security and of course nutrition. And nutrition is the area of expertise of Lynette, and that is how we will transition to the next one. Well, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Kaveh. And I'm very pleased to now welcome Lynette Neufeld, Director of the Food and Nutrition Division, who will be talking about the power of nutrition. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks all for being here. Indeed, we were going to work the other way around, so now I'm going to take a step back and talk a little bit about why it matters so much that we do this and the justification of why this isn't an option that we should think about. This is an imperative that we must find a way to realize. So I'm sure that all of you have heard a million times over the week, perhaps also last week, about the situation that we're currently in. We are off track to meet the Sustainable Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goal 2. We're off track to meet all of the targets that have been set by the World Health Assembly, with the exception of achieving higher rates of breastfeeding. But in terms of the outcomes, we're off track on all of them. So you've all heard the data. 2.6 billion people can't afford a healthy diet. On average, it's estimated about 673 people are undernourished, meaning that they don't have access to sufficient dietary energy to meet the basic need. Not forget the healthy diet, the basic need of dietary energy. And again, all of the World Health Assembly, stunting, wasting, anemia, low birth weight, child obesity are off track. But these global statistics hide enormous disparity at a global level. So if we look just at the prevalence of the unaffordability of a healthy diet, 66.6% of people in Africa cannot afford a healthy diet, which is compared to the 31.9% as a global average, or 5% in North America and Europe. We already know that there are massive inequalities and inequities around the world in food access, but these data really drive that home very meaningfully. Within regions and countries, there's also a lot of variability, with poverty being a primary driver of some forms of malnutrition, whereas others are much more related to the context that we live in, the atmosphere where we procure and consume our food, often referred to as the food environment. Those are common challenges that exist across many contexts, leading to the reality that vitamin and mineral deficiency, obesity, are leveling out in terms of their regional variability. They affecting every single world region, whereas those forms of, quote, undernutrition, stunting and wasting tend to be concentrated in poor countries. Why does that matter so much? Underlying every single one of those forms of malnutrition is an unhealthy diet. Unhealthy for different reasons, perhaps because there just simply is not access to the diverse, nutritious foods that are needed, or because of the abundance of unhealthy foods and lack of access to diverse, nutritious foods. Both of those are problems. Both of those relate to why diets are so unhealthy. So, as I said, malnutrition is a complex problem. Stunting is deeply rooted in poverty and inequalities, and historic long-term poverty and inequalities. And fixing people's diets alone won't fix stunting. We know that. But as we say in epidemiology, fixing the problem of the diet is the necessary, albeit insufficient, condition. The same is true for obesity. There are many factors that contribute to obesity, but the unhealthy diet is, again, that necessary condition. We must fix that if we are going to fix the problem of every single form of malnutrition. So why do we care so much? Somebody's a little shorter, somebody's a little bigger or a little smaller. Why does it matter? Because every form of that malnutrition has health and other impacts. If we think first on the side of stunting and wasting, we know that those are actually just reflections, particularly stunting. It's just a reflection, your lack of growth in height, of what has actually happened in the body. Those situations that lead to that slowing of growth in height has also slowed the growth of every organ and every system in the body. That's where the consequences come from. And those consequences include the difficulty to learn, physical work capacity which is impeded, and it has been proven over and over again that that relates to the economic capacity of individuals and ultimately the economic capacity of nations, as nations are just made up of the individuals that are there. On the same time, obesity and non-communicable diseases carry significant costs in terms of mortality, morbidity, leading to substantial losses across countries. And if you look at a recent World Bank report, it's been estimated that for every dollar invested to improve nutrition, you can have a $23 economic return. That's not only about enabling healthy diets, it's all of the things that are needed for nutrition. As again, that's a lot of different things. But diets are central in there, and they are common to all forms of malnutrition. So if we focus in for a moment on diet specifically, the 2024 SOFA report used a true cost accounting to be able to measure the hidden costs of unhealthy diets. And that specifically focuses in on obesity and the related non-communicable diseases that are associated with that condition. And it was estimated that 70% of the global hidden costs of agri-food systems, or approximately $8.1 trillion of purchasing power parity, can be attributed to the hidden costs of unhealthy diets. And again, obviously, this is highly variable by region, looking at the various forms of malnutrition that are prevalent there. All of these forms of malnutrition are preventable. Some of them are treatable. It's so fundamental that we prevent. We cannot treat them all. So the global dietary trends reveal a growing convergence of the situation that is enabling this situation of unhealthy diets. The availability of lower cost, unhealthy foods, ultra-processed foods, the higher consumption of animal source foods, fats and oils, sweets, beverages. This is happening everywhere. And some have shown data of what they're calling the homogenization of global diets because of those changes and those shifts. And there's data to back that up. I'm not showing slides today, but the data is there. There's many things we can do to reduce this trend. Our individual choices matter. They do matter, and we all have choice to some extent. Some have very limited choices, others have very vast choices, and it matters what we do. But fundamentally, we can't enable people to make better choices if the system isn't allowing them to do that. And there's many things that we need to change in that regard. Access is currently relatively higher and cheaper to the unhealthy foods compared to the diverse, nutritious foods that we would like people to be choosing. We know very well of the aggressive, what we call commercial determinants of health, where unhealthy products in unregulated marketing to young children, for example. We know there's been a proliferation of information and disinformation about foods and its association with health. Every day you open the media, there's a new superfood, there's a new demon food. It's everywhere. And a lot of it is based on science, and a lot of it is not. It is a real challenge. But again, there's also many things that we can do as individuals, as populations, and through the system to change this, and you already heard about some of those. Reducing food loss and waste is one of those things that is a win-win-win. There's nothing that can go wrong and nothing we need to think about in terms of trade-offs if we reduce food loss and waste. Some of them are a little bit more complicated than that. We can all reduce where we consume too much. In parts of the world, we consume very high quantities of animal source foods to our own health detriment and to the detriment of the environment. That's not true, that's not a universal truth, but it's absolutely true in some places. We can also work to curb the consumption of ultra-processed foods, which is beneficial for many fronts. They're heavily packaged, they're heavily processed, they travel across the world. So there's, again, many benefits in that regard. So realizing these benefits of healthy diets for people and planet isn't straightforward. There's no single path. It's actually quite complex. It includes multiple sectors. It requires an understanding of the constraints and opportunities that exist for us to better align policies. My favorite example, in the same country, an agricultural subsidy subsidizes the production of sugar, and a different department of government taxes consumers for their consumption of sugar through sugar-sweetened beverages. That's policy incoherence. And aligning that can help us drive benefits across multiple domains. So in FAO, for example, we are working with several countries now to develop recommendations for optimizing policy baskets, fiscal policy baskets, recognizing that food systems have to deliver on economic results. We can't pretend that diets are at the center of these decisions. They're not. They're economic decisions driven by economists. And we need to find a way to bring the diet and the environment into those economic arguments and make them compelling economic arguments. So, so to conclude, investing in healthy diets, it's not an option, it's an imperative. It offers an opportunity for high returns on public health, including social development, but also environmental sustainability, without losing the critical importance of the economic development that nations need to continue. As I said, there's no single magic bullet. There's a lot of context-specific options and opportunities that we need to explore, and I think we're going to talk about those right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynette. So thank you to you both for framing so eloquently the discussion today. I'm very pleased now to welcome our panelists who will be leading the conversation today. So we have Natasha Iward, Global Lead for Food and Nutrition Security in the Agriculture and Food Global Practice of the World Bank. We have Amalia Daniela Renosto, Special Mandates Officer from the Quebec delegation in Rome. Andrea Porro, Secretary General of the World Farmers Organization. And hopefully online we have Julia Gubat, Department of Science and Technology, Food and Nutrition Research Institute of the Philippines. I would like also to thank the organizer in the United Nations body, Quebec, Canada, the World Bank, the International Financial Institution, and FAO. This is a combined session between the Food and Nutrition Division and the Office of Biodiversity and Climate. So it is my pleasure now to start the conversation, and I would like to first start with the question to Julia. Julia, the question is, in the Philippines, you explored the economic cost of unhealthy diets. What were the key insights from that analysis, and which findings resonated most with policymakers in the Philippines? Julia, over to you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. I hope everybody can hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Good day to everyone and mabuhay from the Philippines. Thank you for the opportunity to share our analysis in uncovering the economic cost of unhealthy diet. So just a brief context, we adopted the methodology developed by the FAO to estimate the cost of unhealthy diets in the country. Using basically the GDQ as a tool, and we used also the food consumption data sets from the Philippine National Nutrition Surveys for two data points. It's the 2013 data set and also the 2018 to 2021 data set. And the main goal actually was to translate the impacts of consuming unhealthy diets into economic terms, because we all know that in policy making, what gets measured gets the attention and actually gets prioritized. So going back to the question, our analysis, our study highlighted three major insights. So first is that unhealthy diets are costly. Why? Because it's been established in the literature and has been repeatedly mentioned globally that poor diet quality is one of the major drivers of non-communicable diseases. And in our analysis, what we saw is that the economic cost of overweight and obesity, high blood pressure, and high fasting blood glucose that can be attributed to unhealthy diets was estimated at 5.2% of the Philippine GDP in 2014, and even higher in 2021. It was estimated at 6.3% of the Philippine GDP. And that is a staggering amount. If we translate that amount into actual figures, that is around 15 billion US dollars in 2014 and 24 billion US dollars in 2021. And we all know that if we lay that down in the context of economic challenges that the Philippines confronts nowadays, if we invest that amount well, that is enough to feed and support hundreds and even thousands of every Filipino families, and that could be multiple times over. So the second insight from that study is that despite the growing burden of diet-related diseases, the Philippine investments seem to be quite misaligned. Our current investments in promoting healthy diets and improving the agri-food systems still lacking. Public spending remains concentrated in curative health rather than preventive, and nutrition as well as the agri-food systems do not get very much attention and budgetary allocations. Lastly, we also noted from our study that there are subnational disparities in diet quality and also in nutrition outcomes in the Philippines. So we have seen in our findings that the different regions in the country also has wide variations, not only in diet quality, but also in the prevalence of non-communicable diseases. This means that while we might appear to be doing well in terms of health and nutrition outcomes at the national level, there are actually deep inequities or disparities across regions. So there is a different problem in Manila, in the National Capital Region, and there is a different situation or context in the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. So those are also shown in our analysis. So for the policymakers, I think the findings that should resonate most is that we need to reframe nutrition as an economic investment. It is not merely a health or welfare issue as traditionally or conventionally viewed, but an economic imperative that is central to productivity and growth of the country. Um, Also, there is a challenge to target subnational disparities, as I have mentioned. We need to address regional inequities. How? Through localized agri-food and nutrition investments. The problem is complex and not easy to do, but we need to ground policy in science and context. And I think that is also needed for our policymakers to promote data-driven and context-specific evidence to tailor interventions and, of course, optimized resource allocation. So yeah, I think I would like to emphasize that nutrition and healthier diets should be at the front and center of economic investments. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you for highlighting the need of finance alignment and also for bringing out this study highlighted disparities that really have an economic value. So I will now ask my second question to Natasha Iward. So the question is, what would it take to make climate and biodiversity investments that promote healthier diets bankable at scale? That's one question. And then how can public institutions help de-risk private capital while ensuring that nutrition and equity goals remain central? Over to you, and thank you.
Thank you, Patricia, for these very comprehensive and challenging questions. And honestly, I think probably across the panel, we could speak about those for quite some time and not necessarily have any silver bullet answers to the opening remarks, right, from Lynette in particular, which recognized the complexity of the different interwoven contributors and therefore the really complex pathways. But just to pick up on the previous speaker, I think clearly being able to amplify the economic case is important. And the World Bank was actually very privileged to partner with FAO and the team on this work, not only in the Philippines, but also in Ethiopia, which highlighted, as she said, that poor diets are responsible for around 6% of GDP loss. And this is due to both stunting and NCDs. So again, it's this double burden that Lynette had reflected on. And as Lynette also mentioned, in terms of the economic case, at the bank, we also have data showing that $1 invested, $23 of return for nutrition targeted investments. But I think our challenge today is thinking about how we bundle our approaches to also take account of climate and nature. We also know, thanks to Kaveh, the economic, not to say the moral case for addressing climate change. And again, from some of the World Bank's own work, the payoffs for addressing, for cutting agri-food emissions are significant, right? They are bigger than the costs. The data shows that these would exceed $4 trillion or a return of around 16 to 1. So the economic case for both climate and nutrition is very clear. I think our particular challenge, in addition to continuing to amplify those arguments, is how we try and work in an integrated fashion. Because of course, all of these things are linked, right? Climate change, if unmitigated, is going to reduce food production. This will drive food price increases. We know that affordability, when food prices are high, limits access to healthy diets. So the connections are very, very clear. But we also know that integrated approaches are not so straightforward. I mean, I speak for myself. We've been talking about this for some time, right? How to work across the aisle, how to work with our colleagues from different departments and sectors. We tend, organizationally, I think whether amongst development partners or in governments, to be organized according to our expertise. So we operate a little bit in these silos. And I think without clearly expressed, deliberate push to do better, arguably accompanied by the right incentives or accountability, it's very hard to get us to move a little bit out of our lane. Again, at the bank, we've been trying to do better. We launched a global challenge program on food and nutrition security about a year ago. And part of that framework, in addition to recognizing the interconnected relationships between climate, nature, nutrition, food security, it's also about compelling us to work better multi-sectorally to address these wicked problems. and not only cross-departmentally, but also trying to think about public and private solutions as well. You know, in the World Bank, we are the World Bank Group. We have the International Finance Corporation, which brings private sector solutions, and it's long been a challenge for us, you know, speaking candidly, to do better at linking up our investments in the enabling environment more from the public sector side to those from our private sector colleagues across the way. I think Lynette also in her remarks, though, recognized that in addition to this effort, we all see the benefits and we all see the effort needed to do better. But I think it is also important to recognize that there can be trade-offs. For example, a least cost, healthy diet may still contribute to GHG emissions. Or shifting to healthier diets could increase GHG emissions. And so I think it is important to be straightforward about that and to try and identify when those trade-offs are at play so that we can plan for them and actually try to address them. Clearly, there's a role for analytics in doing this. So in addition to the work that we've done with FAO, we also were able to partner with WFP to try and use some simulation models to really identify, again, referencing Lynette, these win-win-win situations. Can we have situations of dietary patterns that balance out the health outcomes, affordability, and environmental goals? I mean, that's really what we're driving for, but it's not straightforward. So we do need analysis and evidence to help us then to work with governments to direct their policy choices, avoiding this policy incoherence, but also to target investments and guide investments where they can be most impactful. We had, I think, Kaveh left us with the thoughts. I hope I'm not confusing my previous session that I was in, but we've had some thoughts today, remarks about the volume of financing in the agri-food system that inadvertently is driving the poorest outcomes, right? Massive amounts of public spending, around $800 billion, which unfortunately are driving poor health outcomes and poor environmental outcomes. So having the right analysis and evidence to work with governments to better direct that spending, because of course that spending is absolutely critical. Well-targeted public support, in my view, is non-negotiable, but how do we really drive it in the right direction, not only for environmental outcomes, but for health outcomes? Your question was so huge. How do we do this at scale? That was part 2 of the first question. I'm sorry, it's taken me a while to get here. How do we do it at scale? I mean, I think probably another theme of the week, how do we share knowledge and really strengthen partnerships and collaboration to do this better? How do we leverage one another's knowledge and financing in this space? One of the hats that I wear, in addition to my principal role in the bank, I'm also the program manager for a global instrument called the Global Agriculture and Food Security Program. This is a program that has always set out very intentionally to try and foster integrated approaches, right? We try and reward submissions for our financing that look at positive climate co-benefits and also nutrition outcomes. And we've seen an encouraging shift across our portfolio as we have reinforced that encouragement. So we now have some really great examples of projects that are doing all 3, including with the Rome-based agencies who are our partners. But what I think we're exploring now, and this is an active exploration, is how can we, as one of the sources of finance globally out there, better partner and leverage other available sources of financing? I think Kaveh did speak to the challenge in smallholders accessing climate funds, right? Number one, 7% to the agri-food system, but I think it's less than 1% of that is going to smallholder farmers. But we have the climate funds out there. So GAFS right now is actively engaging in an exploratory, very operational dialogue with our partners, whether it's the GEF or the CIF, to see, can we align our operational and delivery mechanisms so that our financing can add up going towards the same investment on the ground. That was just your first question. I don't know if I have time to go to the second. You tell me, Patricia.
On the second round.
Yes,
Happy
happy
let's hear
to.
first because we will hear from Amalia and then from Andrea, and then we can have
Absolutely.
the challenging question of how do we risk private capital. So building on what Natasha said, what does effective multi-level leadership look like? How can cooperation between governments, region, and local actors make finance actually work for food systems and the right to food?
Merci beaucoup. Alors, puisque c'est prévu la traduction, je vais m'exprimer en français. Alors, Excellences, distingués invités, Mesdames et Messieurs, chère Lynette, chère Cavé, chers collègues, il me fait plaisir de participer à cet événement parallèle co-organisé avec la FAO, avec la Banque mondiale, en marge du Comité mondial sur la sécurité alimentaire. Je vous transmets d'ailleurs les salutations de la déléguée du Québec à Rome, Madame Laurence Fouquet-Langlais, qui, à regret, ne peut être parmi nous aujourd'hui. Alors, afin de répondre à la question posée, il semble opportun de relever que la solidarité constitue un volet important de l'action internationale du Québec. Cette action est fondée sur une approche singulière, co-construite au cours des 25 dernières années. Le renforcement de partenariats mutuellement bénéfiques, le travail de proximité, la flexibilité ainsi que l'égalité entre les femmes et les hommes. Elle favorise l'élaboration d'actions fondées sur les priorités établies par, pour et avec les populations locales, afin de privilégier la prise en charge collective, la pérennité et la durabilité des actions soutenues. Elle contribue à l'atteinte des objectifs de développement durable élaborés par les Nations unies dans le cadre du programme de développement durable à l'horizon 2030. Donc, s'agissant de l'approche du Québec, elle se traduit par un travail de concertation et de co-construction avec des organismes de coopération internationale québécois ayant pour mission principale le développement humain, la coopération et la solidarité internationale, privilégiant des interventions auprès des populations les plus vulnérables. C'est un appui aux actions menées par des OCI québécois en partenariat avec des organisations basées dans ces pays en situation de vulnérabilité. Par exemple, l'Afrique francophone constitue un espace de solidarité prioritaire pour le Québec, compte tenu de son appartenance à la communauté francophone internationale. Par ailleurs, l'Amérique latine et les Antilles sont aussi priorisées, et particulièrement Haïti, en raison de son appartenance au continent américain et des affinités culturelles et économiques avec ces régions. Tout cela dans un esprit de partenariat d'égal à égal, de respect mutuel, de collaboration à tous les niveaux. Ce sont des actions fondées sur les priorités identifiées par et pour les populations locales, mais aussi des actions alignées sur les ODD. C'est enfin une réponse tangible à des enjeux globaux comme les droits humains, la croissance inclusive, le développement durable, l'égalité entre les genres. Bref, des enjeux contemporains comme les changements climatiques, la biodiversité et la sécurité alimentaire que le Québec considère intimement liés. Dans la mise en œuvre de ces programmes de solidarité, le Québec privilégie le partenariat avec les organismes de société civile. Il reconnaît la contribution importante de ces organisations à l'exercice de l'éducation à la citoyenneté mondiale, au développement social et économique et à la construction de rapports plus justes et solidaires entre les peuples. Cette manière de travailler mise sur leur expérience, leurs connaissances et les ressources existantes. Les partenaires québécois sont principalement les OCI, dont le siège social est situé au Québec, ou dont le Bureau québécois dispose d'une autonomie de sélection, de gestion et d'intervention dans des pays vulnérables. Ces organismes ont pour mission principale le développement humain, la coopération et la solidarité internationale. Ils sont actifs dans plus d'une centaine de pays et leurs actions s'inscrivent de façon significative dans l'atteinte des ODD. Ils contribuent au financement des projets réalisés avec l'appui du gouvernement du Québec. Certains projets sont mis en œuvre en partenariat avec des organismes et d'autres organisations québécoises de la société civile, dont le secteur de l'éducation, le secteur privé, les organisations internationales comme la FAO. La complémentarité des expertises permet de maximiser les retombées socio-économiques de ces initiatives. Les actions appuyées par les programmes de solidarité sont le fruit d'un partenariat donc entre un OCI québécois et un partenaire local. Ce dernier définit les besoins de sa communauté et est le maître d'œuvre du projet sur le terrain. Ce partenaire fournit également un apport financier ou en service dans la mise en place des initiatives. Ces partenaires locaux appuient le développement des populations locales. Il peut s'agir, par exemple, d'ONG locales, de coopératives, d'organismes de défense des droits de la personne, des organisations paysannes, des groupements de femmes. Un exemple concret de cette approche est certainement le partenariat entre le Québec et la FAO dans le cadre du projet SAGA. Il illustre parfaitement la vision que nous partageons avec la FAO, soit transformer les systèmes alimentaires pour les rendre plus durables, inclusifs, résilients, au bénéfice des populations les plus vulnérables. Et cela s'appuie sur des partenariats solides entre gouvernements, ministères, chercheurs, universités, organisations de la société civile, et ce, afin de promouvoir une action conjointe et cohérente à travers une approche multi-acteurs et multi-échelles, c'est-à-dire de l'institutionnel vers le niveau local. Un partenariat technique et financier, donc, qui ne cesse de se renforcer par une série d'initiatives, notamment depuis la dernière décennie. En 2017, le Symposium international sur la sécurité alimentaire et le changement climatique, tenu à Québec en collaboration avec la FAO, a donné naissance au projet SAGA. Au cours de la période 2018-23, le projet SAGA 1 a été initié avec la phase pilote en Haïti et au Sénégal. Puis, le Québec a renouvelé son financement pour une deuxième phase appelée SAGA 2, avec extension cette fois en Côte d'Ivoire. Plus récemment, en 2024, le Symposium sur la biodiversité, l'agriculture et la sécurité alimentaire a été co-organisé à Québec avec l'Université Laval et le secrétariat de la Convention sur la diversité biologique. Ces initiatives traduisent une vision commune, renforcer la coopération internationale et accélérer la transformation vers des systèmes agroalimentaires plus résilients, plus durables, plus inclusifs. Par ailleurs, le recul mondial de la biodiversité est l'un des plus importants enjeux planétaires qui soit en ce 21e siècle. Au Canada et à l'échelle internationale, le Québec, en tant qu'État fédéré, est considéré comme un acteur actif et engagé à l'égard de la biodiversité. Sa vision est que le Québec peut et doit faire plus en matière de protection de la biodiversité. Cela se traduit, entre autres, par une présence accrue du Québec dans les forums multilatéraux chargés de concevoir des solutions communes à ces enjeux, ou encore par la mise en valeur de son savoir-faire. Le Québec a accueilli la COP 15 en décembre 22. C'est à l'issue de cette conférence que l'accord de Kunming-Montréal a été adopté. Le Québec y a fait preuve de leadership en faisant valoir l'importance des gouvernements infranationaux dans la mise en œuvre du nouveau cadre mondial. Il a suivi activement les négociations tout en contribuant à plusieurs événements parallèles, tels que le 7e sommet des gouvernements infranationaux et des villes. En marge de cette conférence, le Québec a annoncé plusieurs engagements en matière de conservation de la nature, notamment celui d'élaborer le plan Nature 2030, qui contribuera à l'atteinte de la majorité des cibles mondiales sur le territoire québécois, dont celle visant la conservation de 30% des milieux continentaux et de 30% des milieux marins d'ici 2030, tout en étant adapté à la réalité des régions et priorités du Québec. Concrètement, le Québec mise sur 4 leviers d'investissement complémentaires en biodiversité qui agissent ensemble pour renforcer la durabilité de son système alimentaire et améliorer l'accès de la population à des régimes sains et nutritifs. En synthèse, il le fait en combinant des investissements dans la conservation directe de la biodiversité, une agriculture durable qui en tire parti, un système bioalimentaire local fondé sur les territoires et une coopération internationale axée sur la résilience écologique. Le Québec fait donc des investissements directs et indirects dans la biodiversité, un levier stratégique de son système alimentaire. Ensemble, ces leviers participent à sécuriser la production, favoriser la santé publique et accroître la justice alimentaire, tout en contribuant bien sûr à l'atteinte des objectifs du cadre mondial de la biodiversité de Kunming-Montréal. En conclusion, en cette année où nous célébrons le 80e anniversaire de la FAO, fondée à Québec, rappelons-le, on ne peut que réitérer l'engagement commun à favoriser une agriculture résiliente et durable, un engagement que le Québec met en œuvre par son modèle de coopération et son leadership d'État fédéré en action climatique et pour la biodiversité. Merci.
Thank you so much for these powerful words about multi-level leadership and solidarity, and also for bringing the emphasis on biodiversity. Now, we have heard about farmers, so I'm very pleased to welcome Andrea Porro with a question. How can farmer-led initiative, especially those led by women and youth, shape investment priorities and make the right to food a lived reality?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the question. And sincere thanks to FAO, the Government of Quebec, the World Bank, and all the partners that made today's dialogue possible. This discussion sits at the heart of the transformation that we all claim that we urgently need, one that recognizes that the right to food, climate action, and biodiversity protection are interlinked imperatives. Us at the World Farmer Organization, which we represent more than 75 farmer organizations and cooperatives across about 60 countries, unites millions of producers who remain too often at the margin of the investment decisions that directly shape their livelihoods and the health of our planet. It has said before me and better than me that at the SOFI, the state of food insecurity, we have still large amount of population that have challenge to access food, and a quota of that, of the food insecure, are farmers. That's the paradox of our time. The food producer go to bed hungry. Not only that, we are looking at a right to food that is not only about access to nutrients, it's access to health, diverse, and we hope and we encourage farm-produced diets. But to realize this right, investment in climate and biodiversity, so let's call it the triple planetary crisis, the 3 Rio Conventions, the number 3 keep to return to us. So climate and biodiversity must be designed with farmers and for farmers, and especially must be grounded in local agricultural realities. Across our network, and I will give only a couple of examples, not to, well, basically kill anyone by data and information, we see daily proof that transformation is possible. Young farmers from Brazil, part of our family of family farmer, are regenerating soil through no-tillage and crop livestock forest integration, showing that biodiversity is the foundation of resilience. In Botswana, farmers, young farmers and women farmers, are demonstrating that they are not just implementers of policies, but they are co-designers of solutions that bring life back to degraded lands and prosperity back to communities. But this example reminded us something very clear. The climate and biodiversity investment must reflect local realities and build on farmer experience. For the people around the room, and I see some faces that has been through the Baku's experience in the COP climate, the SB62 in Bonn, the Standing Committee of Finance here in FAO, the biodiversity discussion here in FAO, such a powerful house to host all discussion. We all see that, as Kaveh said better than me, there is funds available there which is failing to reach farmers. And is failing to reach women farmers and youth especially, and even less the ones that are dealing with livestock. And I'm always referring to one of the key groups that I always been proud to work with, the pastoralists. So that we're talking a negligible amount of funds, difficult to access because at local level, while globally they might be granted to the form of grant, locally tend to be granted in the form of loan from the private and agricultural development bank, which discourage, due to the bureaucratic admin impediment and a lack of collateral, small-sized farmer, women farmer, and youth to access the funds that they desperately need to transform. As someone said better than me before me, if you are in the red, you cannot go green. So what this lesson has taught us, and again, I think that the number 3 can help today. So we draw 3 priorities that have been emerged from our farmers. First, invest alignment. Finance for climate and biodiversity must also advance the right to food. This means integrating food production and food and nutrition security into investment frameworks. Initiatives such as the FAST Partnership, the Baku Ammonia Climate Initiative for Farmers are encouraging examples on how target finance can drive food system transformation. But the second is also equally important, investment design. Farmer organization, and that is our constant pitch, must be a farmer organization or cooperative, so the modality of representation of farmers must be part of the decision making from the very beginning. When farmers' voice helps shape project goals, implementation becomes more effective and lasting. Programs aimed at scaling up successful farmer practice proved to be effective and sustainable in the longer run. And lastly, investment inclusivity. We must ensure that women and young farmers are not left behind. As I mentioned before, there are more pragmatic impediment that lack of collateral, issue on land tenure, that place even more challenge, more bump along this road of transformation for women and young farmers. Women farmers receive only a fraction, as I said, of agricultural finance, and land and capital escapes also young farmers as well. Improving women and youth access to investment and innovation, and that's another key word, is boost to successful implementation of program. We call as WFO for greater policy coherence, and today that we are talking about a convergence around the 3 Rio Convention, that coherence is even more important given what we notice of a challenge of the public funds and the looking of new alternatives, private funds, private sector, foundation, but that requires a greater effort in coherence, aligning national climate and biodiversity strategy with food and nutrition goals, and ensuring that global and local financial mechanisms recognize farmers as central actors in implementation. We cannot afford to treat food production as separate from the climate and biodiversity agenda, as Article 2.1 of the Paris Agreement reminds us. The World Farm Organization stands ready to work with key UN agencies, government, financial institutions, and the private sector to ensure that climate and biodiversity investment deliver for farmers, for consumers, for the planet, for us all. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have reached almost the time, and we would like to have some questions. So any question here in the room? Any question? No? Any question from the online? I don't know if, yeah. Okay, if there are no questions, there is something on the chat. Okay, if there are no questions to the panelists, I'm very pleased to welcome our last speaker, His Excellency, the Ambassador, Mr. Ngor Nyaje, Ambassador of Senegal to Italy, who will deliver the concluding remarks. Over to you, and thank you.
Sorry, Ambassador. I would like to thank the organizers, FAO, Quebec, World Farmers Organization, and the World Bank for convening this event and for this much needed dialogue. On the road to COP30, we prepared a HLP food security and nutrition note that it was presented on May in the CFS. And the name it was Tackling Climate Change, Biodiversity Loss and Land Degradation Through the Right to Food. That was presented and it's clear our message to transform our food system. Investments in climate and biodiversity must integrate the right to food as this event presents. This means prioritizing approaches with multiple benefits, such as agroecology, for example, ensuring that finance, such as that from FAST and Baku Harnessing initiative mentioned by Andrea, reach small-scale producers directly, using tools like through cost accounting to align investments with food security and sustainability, and fostering cross-sectoral collaboration. That it's amazing, the Quebec initiatives and all the things they did, as demonstrated today among all government representatives, farmers, financial institutions, and academia co-creating solutions. Also, Andrea talked about it. So without social justice, there will be no lasting environmental solutions and no right to food. And this must be our central message to the road to COP30. Thanks, sorry.
Thank you so much. His Excellency, the floor is yours.
Voilà, donc merci beaucoup. Je voudrais remercier les organisateurs de cet événement qui est plus qu'important et remercier les panélistes qui ont déjà posé le débat et remercier également les participants qui ont pris de leur temps pour venir écouter, assister et partager. J'ai entendu plusieurs points qui confirment ce que je pensais et ce que nous savons pratiquement tous, que le monde est un et indivisible et que nous sommes ensemble. Les combats que nous menons sont des combats communs et que nous avons tous les moyens pour les gagner. Toutes les initiatives que nous avons sont bonnes. Aucune initiative en soi n'est mauvaise. Ce qui est le plus important, c'est l'esprit qui préside à la mise en œuvre d'une initiative et surtout l'impact qu'elle aura sur la vie des uns et des autres. Vous l'avez si bien dit, je crois que nous avons commencé par la dame d'origine philippine qui a bien expliqué que dans son pays, on avait commencé par une méthodologie et ensuite un recueil des données qui ont permis de savoir exactement où on va. Et je pense que dans un contexte pareil, il est important de savoir où l'on va. La deuxième chose, et qui a été développée par la Banque mondiale, il faut avoir les moyens d'y aller. Nous savons où nous allons, mais il faut avoir les moyens d'y aller. Et nous ne pouvons pas tous avoir les moyens. Quand quelqu'un est né avant vous, vous ne pourrez jamais le rattraper en âge, mais vous pouvez le rattraper en force. Il y a des gens qui sont devant, il faut qu'ils acceptent d'aller chercher ceux qui sont derrière et de les tirer vers l'excellence. Le monde ne peut fonctionner comme ça. Si vous ne le faites pas de vous-même, ça se fera naturellement. Parce qu'un jour, vous allez vieillir, les enfants d'hier seront les grands de demain, et certainement, vous avez besoin de leur aide. Donc, c'est quand vous avez la force qu'il faut tirer les gens vers vous pour qu'ensemble, nous puissions avancer et pour que demain, les gens se souviennent de vous. Nous avons également entendu parler de l'expérience du Canada, qui est un allié important du Sénégal, qui fait de grandes choses. Et ce sont des choses dont beaucoup de pays devraient s'inspirer pour augmenter l'échelle. Une initiative, elle est bonne. Quand elle marche, vous n'avez pas besoin de créer une autre initiative parallèle ou concurrente. Inspirez-vous de ce qui marche, essayez de l'étendre à une grande échelle et après vous aidez plus. Mais quelqu'un a déjà réfléchi, il a mis en place une initiative qui marche. Vous venez vous dire que bon, ça c'est le Canada, moi je suis un autre pays, je ne vais pas m'inspirer du Canada. Ça c'est plus de l'orgueil, ce n'est pas de l'aide. Il faut vous inspirer de ce qui marche déjà et vous gagnez du temps. Le représentant des fermiers également a évoqué les questions d'investissement et j'ai trouvé important ce qu'il dit. Parce que le problème auquel nous sommes confrontés dans les pays africains, c'est que généralement les gens qui viennent investir veulent se substituer aux agriculteurs qui sont sur place. Et ça ne marchera pas. Je vais prendre un exemple simple. Il paraît que les Kenyans, tout le monde sait qu'ils sont très très rapides en athlétisme. Il paraît que le premier entraîneur étranger qu'ils ont eu, quand il est arrivé, il a regardé, ah non, la manière dont vous courez là, c'est pas possible, vous ne serez jamais de grands athlètes. Il est parti. Un autre est venu, il a regardé, il a dit, mais vous courez très bien, vous êtes les meilleurs. Il faut juste corriger ça, corriger ça, corriger ça, et tout le monde voit aujourd'hui le résultat. Donc, il est important que nous puissions nous inspirer des pratiques locales. Nos ancêtres n'étaient pas à l'école, mais nos ancêtres vivaient de quelque chose. Nos ancêtres faisaient de l'agriculture, ils n'étaient pas des ingénieurs. Ils faisaient de l'agriculture, ils se nourrissaient et ils avaient une nourriture saine. Et le constat, c'est qu'ils vivaient même plus longtemps que nous. Ils avaient moins de maladies que nous. Alors, qu'est-ce qui se passe qu'aujourd'hui, pour que nous, avec plus de ressources, plus de sciences, nous mangions plus mal et nous produisons moins? Ça, c'est un problème qu'il faut étudier et comprendre. Parce qu'en réalité, l'agriculture doit se faire dans un milieu. Mais vous ne pouvez pas être né dans un immeuble, vous n'avez jamais vécu dans un village, vous ne connaissez rien à la terre, vous voulez être un grand agriculteur. Vous dites que l'agriculture rapporte de l'argent, vous allez investir dans l'agriculture. Mais ce que vous recherchez, ce n'est pas l'agriculture, c'est de l'argent. Et demain, si l'agriculture ne vous rapporte pas, vous laissez l'agriculture, vous allez investir dans l'élevage. Si l'élevage ne vous rapporte pas, vous allez quitter l'élevage, vous allez investir dans l'immobilier. Alors que l'agriculture, il vit de ça. Et ce sont les agriculteurs que nous devons accompagner pour transformer l'agriculture. On ne peut pas se substituer à eux, venir prendre leur place, leur dire que voilà comment il faut faire pour gagner de l'argent. Celui qui produit et qui mange, il pense différemment que celui qui produit pour vendre. Parce que quand vous produisez pour vendre, ce que vous produisez, peut-être que ce soit bon ou ce n'est pas bon, ce n'est pas important. Ce qui vous intéresse, c'est l'argent que vous en tirez. Mais celui qui mange ce qu'il produit, il a une relation saine avec la nourriture. Il a une relation saine avec le travail. Et ça, nous devons l'encourager, nous devons le respecter. Tout peuple a les moyens de se nourrir. Dans chaque environnement, vous trouvez ce qui est important pour vous nourrir et avoir une alimentation saine. Mais quand on commence à importer des modes de vie, quand on commence à importer de la nourriture, malheureusement, on agresse l'organisme et on agresse le milieu. Et à la fin, ça crée des problèmes. Au Sénégal, on a l'habitude de dire ce qui est bon pour la bouche n'est pas forcément bon pour le corps. C'est-à-dire les nourritures qui sont délicieuses, savoureuses, forcément ne sont pas bonnes pour le corps. Donc il faut manger ce qui est bon pour le corps. Moi, je me souviens quand j'étais jeune, mon père il disait non, pas de sucre chez moi. Mais le sucre c'est bon, mais oui, mais ça vous rapporte quoi? Absolument rien. Et aujourd'hui, 20 ans, 30 ans après, je me rends compte que personne ne veut plus prendre de sucre. Alors qu'à cette époque, on disait que mais mon père il est fou. Comment on peut manger sans sucre? Donc aujourd'hui, on se rend compte que si nous avions respecté cette connaissance locale, peut-être beaucoup de problèmes que nous avons aujourd'hui, nous ne les aurions pas eus. Donc voilà un peu en résumé ce qu'il faut. Il faut investir, certes, il faut manger sainement, mais nous avons tous les moyens pour savoir. Il faut juste que les gens se respectent davantage et que les gens acceptent d'aller apprendre auprès des sources. Comme le disent les farmers, voilà, lui c'est un farmer. Moi, je suis né dans une famille de farmers. Et je vous dis aujourd'hui, je mange mieux. Je mangeais mieux plus ou moins quand j'étais jeune qu'aujourd'hui. Et je gagne 10 fois plus que ce que gagnaient mes parents. C'est quoi le problème? Je n'ai pas changé. Parce que ce que j'aurais dû manger, je ne peux plus le trouver. Voilà, à l'époque, je me souviens quand on était jeune, on allait au grenier, on prenait de la nourriture, on mangeait. Mais aujourd'hui, tout est transformé. On ajoute des produits, on ajoute des choses, etc. Ce qui fait que la nourriture que nous mangeons, malheureusement, n'est plus bonne. Aujourd'hui, on mange des produits qui ressortent du frigo. Nous, quand on était jeunes, ça, on considère que c'est des problèmes de riches. Nous, quand on était jeunes, on n'avait pas des trucs surgelés, des trucs qu'on réchauffe, on préparait, on mangeait et on partait, on était plus sains. La science doit servir à ça. La science doit servir. Le français dit que science sans conscience n'est que ruine de l'âme. Il ne faut pas qu'on pense qu'avancer, c'est juste faire plus d'argent. Il faut penser à respecter le corps humain et à lui donner plus de moyens pour vivre longtemps, vivre en bonne santé. La santé, c'est quelque chose de très, très, très précieux. Et quand nous oublions la santé, nous nous oublions nous-mêmes. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I thank you. There is a refreshment outside. That's the last message. Please, you are welcome. And thank you to everyone. Thank you for being here.
Sorry, I couldn't go to the second side. I didn't want to talk too much. The first one was...
We didn't hear the second part of your...
No one will ever know. But it's not a problem. Not a problem.